We back. We
We're
back. We back. We back. Hello, hello. To all of our listeners, we are back.
Hillary and Clinton, BlackLantic.
Season 3 of BlackLantic. We've missed you. We hope that you've missed us. You've been seeing a little bit less of our posts and comments on social media, not comments, but posts, because we're trying not to get banned. And we're going to talk about that today. But as we do, we have had a hiatus between our season 2 and season 3. We have put out now 60 episodes of BlackLantic, over 60 hours of content. I think we've proven that we are a viable podcast and company that deserves your support and funding.
Pay us. Give us money.
Let's throw it up right there. If you've been listening, if you're new to the channel, I don't know what side it's on. Please feel free to scan that QR code or go there and fund us and support what we're doing. I've been talking a lot. Hillary, what up?
Other ways to support: like, comment, subscribe, do all of the things, rate us. We have all of the social medias: Threads, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And as we're going to get into, you can find some of our content on some of those places, and hopefully you'll continue to see our content on all of those places. But who knows? I think that's well. And welcome to episode 1 of season 3. May I also say, let's start season 3, episode 1 with me having almost no voice and then me screaming about season 1, episode 3.
Yes. You can use that as the excuse. We would like to start off by doing something we haven't done in previous seasons at the beginning of our episodes.
I almost forgot. Let me do my due diligence. So we've made a very important discussion that obviously we want to recognize that we both host this podcast on Indigenous land. This is not our land, but we are in 2 separate lands when we record. So I will be reading the land acknowledgement for the city of Toronto, which is where I reside, although it's East York, but that falls under the Toronto umbrella. So the city of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Amazing. And Clinton.
We would like to acknowledge, honor, and pay respect to the traditional owners and custodians from all 4 directions of the land on which I'm recording from today. And we are upon the unceded ancestral laws of the Mi'kmaq people. So
now we do something very important.
Absolutely, we do. So this week, we are going to get into a very important topic. We are going to talk about Bill D-19.
Yes.
We're not sure how it works. We don't want to get banned for just saying it.
Right. Well, before we get into that, we spent 2 months apart. What did you do in the last 2 months other than see me several times?
I did see you a few times, several times, and that was fantastic. Anyone who listens to the show knows that I'm not great at talking about myself and what I've been up to or even remembering, but I'm going to do my best in no particular order. So I did go to Toronto over the summer, which was fantastic. It's the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So, all of those legendary artists are coming out of the woodwork. I got to go to Toronto. We saw The Roots, LL Cool J, DJ Jazzy Jeff, Jadakiss from the Locks, Queen Latifah, and I think B Money, DJ Z-Tech, I think is his name. That was amazing. Spent time in Toronto, spent time with Hillary. Hillary came out here to New Brunswick for the 3rd, I believe, Afro-Caribbean Festival, Atlantic Canada, 4th possibly, Atlantic Canada's only Afro-Caribbean festival. We were hired to be there, take some content, and we recorded a really, really cool, interesting podcast with some very talented, popular, and well-known musicians. And we're looking forward to dropping that soon.
I just want to interject because while you said the accolades of the organization, you didn't say it's Summer Salsa. Even though everyone who probably watches us knows, you said the only Afro-Caribbean festival. and the name is Summer Salsa. But we are very excited for this episode to drop. It might very well be the next thing that you see. We are not 100% sure. But it's very, very dope with some very cool people. Felt a little out of my wheelhouse because I don't do the music thing, but I do the talking. It was great.
Oh, you reminded me of that. Yeah, Summer Solstice. So for my apologies for that, but the fact is, I love saying that it's Atlantic Canada's only Afro Caribbean festival
Yeah.
because I've been here for 14 years and there's never been anything like this. I really miss Caravana, and so it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to making it bigger and better next year. Let me move along a bit faster here. Mosaic took place, the Moncton's Multicultural Festival recently, and I had the opportunity to go on stage and interview one of our season 2 guests, Aquaculture, and also plug BlackLantic and sort of get our podcast out to a wider audience. BlackLantic, as an organization, we were hired to start doing book reviews. So I completed my first book review on a book called Shovels Not Rifles by Gloria Wesley, I believe. We'll post about that soon. If I got the last name wrong, I'm sorry. And well, my partner Hillary here does like 5 podcasts. I don't know if you still do, but you were 2 now. Okay,
2, but
I'm
I'm
really
about to do a
excited
third.
I've been there you go. I've been a lifelong musician, so I'm very happy to say that I'm working on a side project right now. I won't drop the name of it yet, but a side podcast in which I focus exclusively on interviewing in a much shorter form content Black musicians to get the word out there. There's a lot of talented artists out here that I've come across, and yeah, that's going to be a little feature on the side. I probably missed some things, but I think I pat on my back. Pretty good job of talking about myself there. What have you been up to, Hillary?
We'll say that the music podcast is going to be part of the BlackLantic umbrella, so you'll be able to find it where you find all of our stuff and all of Clinton's stuff, unless you decide to make a new platform for it because it just blows up and it's bigger than our show, which would be hilarious. I'd be madly annoyed, but I'd be proud.
What do you mean? You do like 17 podcasts. Can't do a second podcast. It's going to have its own platform, but it's going to be partnered with BlackLantic on the BlackLantic website, and shared posts and contents and reels and stuff like that. What was that?
I said awesome.
Oh no, you said what it would be. You were in the middle of a sentence. Maybe you weren't. I think
I was just about to say that it would be very funny to like go on our platform and see all of the like music stuff getting like 10-20,000 views, our podcast getting like a couple hundred at best, and then, you're like, you know what, this is just bigger than this platform, you take it away.
Oh, I haven't worked out the details of all of that. I just know I love music and I want to do my part and get those artists out here. Yeah.
It's gonna be very
all right, so why don't you tell everyone the 5 million things you've been up to?
5 million. I'll try to be quick. Summer Salsa was thick, great, awesome, a banger. First time in Fredericton, I think in like over a decade. It was very nice to be there and connect and meet so many new people. What else? I don't even know what else happened.
You went to New York City.
So most recently in September, I went to I suppose I guess we were off. Were we off in August too?
You did Legacy.
Were we off in August as well?
I don't even remember when I said the Toronto trip thing. I don't think we were broadcasting at the time.
No, so I think we only took September off. So went to New York Fashion Week. Was there for 8 days. Saw the biggest shows we've ever seen. Got to interview Pamela Rowland. Got to meet. I don't know if you saw. I got to meet Angela Bassett. Like the
That's
Angela Bassett.
Yeah, that was wild.
So that was insane. She said I looked stunning and I almost burst into tears. I was also near Tasty from Orange is the New Black. There were a lot of amazing Black people out and about. So that was very great. And then I caught COVID and I was sick for 8 days and then in bed for another 8 with a migraine episode after that. I've only been out of bed for about a week. But in that 1 week, I went to the Federation of Black Canadians Impact Gala to raise some money for them. I went to the Legacy Awards and saw Director X, Julie Black, Chaos, Lamorne from New Girl, the crew of City Line, Drag Queen, Amora Kamor, DJ Four Corners. Oh, Keisha Shante. The way that I scream when I met Keisha Shante. I just love her. I hung out with Sasha Exeter. So many cool people. I made a Bruegel from Handmaid's Tale. So it was like black star-studded night. Super, super fun. And then what else has happened this week? The AGO Art Bash was last night, and we raised money for the art gallery, and that was a lot of fun. We've gone to some art exhibits and some fashion things. I've been very busy.
That's
I
amazing.
had 8 events this week, and I have 3 tonight after we end this call. I have to go to 3 places.
3 events. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to take 20 seconds and say that Canada really is small, or at least certain communities and industries are. When I was backstage hanging out in the green room at the Mosaic Multicultural Festival, someone after a while was just kept staring at me really awkwardly. And I looked at them and I'm like, are you okay? Are you looking at me? Are you looking behind me? Do you need anything? And who it was backstage, it was a backup singer for a Toronto 6-time Juno Award reggae artist nominee. So she was a backup singer for this artist named Amoy, and she was staring at me because 20 years ago, her and I co-starred in Canada's first ever hip-hop musical called The Real Deal back in 2013. It showed, I probably never told you this. Back in 2003, it ran for multiple nights. There was a sequel. I've done a lot of things. And
But
she
this
here
is
she was.
news. It's historic. Did you just
It
say
is.
it's Canada's first hip-hop musical?
Yeah, yeah.
Why
It
is
was.
that not? We should be talking about this.
2003 was different. It's just there wasn't social media like there is now, right? It was hosted and sort of sponsored by St. Albans, which was a boys and girls club out of Bloor and Bathurst area. Anyways, so like just backstage, Moncton ran into her. Trish, amazing singer, amazing actress, amazing person, and it was just really cool. I've done some neat things. We should get into the
Let's get
podcast.
into
What do you think?
Bill D-19.
Bill D-19, wink, wink, wink. All right, so Canada has passed a controversial bill. Not a new concept. This same concept has been done in Australia, more successfully than Canada at the moment. And even countries like France have fined and charged companies like Meta and Google for using material that did not belong to them. Now, I did talk about back in the day just now, but back in the day before Google and Meta and social media, news papers and news radio and TV stations had a complete monopoly on the news and how the news was consumed. And especially when it comes to things like ad dollars. If you wanted to get your word out to someone about your business or event or something you were doing, you had to pay a newspaper or a radio station a lot of money to get the word out there. Now, all that's changed. Nowadays, the majority of people around the world, especially and in Canada as well, they get their news from social media. They scroll their social media feeds, they click, they see articles, they go to the websites. The websites, if you click and go through and you stay on long enough, the news stations themselves, they may get some of the ad revenue from you being on their website. But in general, a lot of the ad dollars nowadays have been taken over by these social media companies, primarily Meta and Google. This has had a huge impact on news media all across the sphere. You see news agencies cutting costs, laying off employees, and they're just not able to keep their operations going. Now, news is funded by the public, like I said, advertisers, and when people used to buy newspapers, and as well public funding from taxpayer money. But a lot of that money has gone away. And so, I mean, that's a bit of the backstory. A bit of my opinion is that news agencies don't like that, and they're looking for ways to stay afloat. And so Bill D-19 was introduced to try to counteract some of that. They want to hold these social media companies responsible for the money that's being taken away from them so that they can continue to operate. And the social media companies, they're not interested in doing that. They don't want to dish out those funds, because why would they? Why would they want to pay for something they've essentially been getting access to for free for years all across the globe in every single country? I started to give a bit of my opinion, but I'd like to hear from you as well, Hillary. So before I take too much of the, the microphone away and get too deep, I feel like that's a good backstory. Please add anything
Yes.
I've left out, but that's what's been happening, and
Yeah.
has well. I won't even ask a question. What do you think about that? What's the
Um,
question? I won't ask the
so
question I was going to ask.
I think that I've had conflicting feelings. I definitely understand the government's push to try to get more funding for these companies, and being affiliated with some of the smaller grassroots organizations that are now no longer able to post on social media. It is definitely affecting their money. So hold on, let me dial it back.
Hmm.
I think that trying to get additional funding for bigger organizations is fine. Fine. We can try to get more money for the CTVs and the CBCs and the Globals and also all of the other people along the way. What's actually happening, though, is because we are blocking the ability to put these articles on social media. We're limiting the access to the social media or these news websites, which then reduces the amount of website clicks and views on the articles for the ads that live on the websites that are independent. So while the intention was good to, let's say we were news and we had an article, we wanted to share it on Instagram and we wanted Meta to pay us for sharing that because they get ads, that intention is fine. But now, because of the backlash from Meta, no one's going to the website to look at the article in the first place. So we are now losing out because no one's looking at our website and our traffic would be down a cajillion percent. And
Hmm.
so I think that obviously, you know that personally this has impacted me a lot.
Yes.
Um, for all of my written work, I can only really share on like 1 to 2 platforms. One type of work that I was doing, which was like the green screen style reels that I was sharing information for, is just simply gone and impossible. And I've lost out on thousands of dollars. Um, and I think what I've also find interesting is how is the like trickle effect this seems to be having in terms of censorship of media as a whole, and
Hmm.
also how this is impacting so many various communities. So my initial like answer to my thought about this is that I think that the government had good intentions. I think that it should be revoked because too many people are suffering because of this attempt to get more money out of these organizations. Or companies. We're at a point where two guys are the richest guys in terms of owning these platforms. And unless we build new competitive platforms, there's nothing we can really do to beat Facebook, Instagram, Meta conglomerate, and like Elon Musk and Twitter. So I just think that while it sucks to be in a position where we need to play nice, I would rather people read my stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and also like not to get into much of the politics of it, but like the money that these organizations or like these media companies, the bigger ones that I'm winking about, the money that they would make from Facebook, is that really going to get into my pocket? Is that going to help me? Because I know like there's like these set budgets and I know the budgets are already tight, and I just don't know the logistics of how much money obviously that was supposed to be asked. But like I just can't imagine that impacting me that severely. But the fact that people can't read my work means that like where am I supposed to put it on my resume? Where is the view count? Where are the accolades that are going to impact my career propelling forward? Instead, I'm at this stalemate because some guy doesn't want to relinquish like 10,000 of his millions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Cabbage.
Yeah, but what responsibility? So these are huge tech companies that have been uber successful, and they do
Mhm.
have way too much money. But what responsibility really do they have to pay Canadian news agencies for just simply sharing links when people do Google searches? Now, I think it's a cool idea, and I think if they agreed with it, that would be great. But I just have, and it has severely impacted the ability for people to consume Canadian news. And your organizations, as well as other ones that I'm aware of, their website clicks are down like 50 to 80%. So they are really these companies, these big tech companies, were really providing a gateway for people to at least consume news, and them taking that away has shown the real power they have. Google, I don't mind saying the companies' names. I don't think that's a bad thing. Google, kind of refers to themselves as, when it comes to news, is like they're kind of like a newsstand, right? Like people like used to walk by, or there used to be on street corners, news boxes. You open it up, you see the news, or a headline catches your eye, and it's a newsstand, and so you might pick up the paper and buy it. But I mean, are you going to blame the newsstand? Are you going to blame the website that shares the link for what you're doing and say that newsstand owes the newspapers money? I mean, where does it go from
Well,
there? Just one sec. Like, would everything that Google displays eventually, like if I just created a website and posted a bunch of articles and people found them, would Google have to pay me? And if these tech companies give into Canada, I think that just sets a precedent around the globe for every country starting to demand money from these tech companies that can afford it, but demand money from these tech companies for just displaying clickable links. Um, and I know that in Bill D-19, it doesn't even give specifications for the quality of the journalism, the accuracy of the journalism. Even companies spreading widespread misinformation would still be entitled to compensation. And there is no stipulations within the bill that outlines what the compensation should be. It's just that it has to be agreed upon and that it has to be fair. And again, in Australia, just for like a case, what's it called, case study,
case study.
yeah, they passed the law, they passed the bill. It was rejected at first. I believe the news was pulled from that country, and they worked out something. So I think that's what Canada's hoping to achieve. Canada decided to stop marketing. The Canadian government decided to stop using Facebook for marketing because of Facebook's decision, which to me, I believe, was the biggest joke ever. I think the Canadian government spends $10 million a year on marketing on Facebook. But last year, Facebook generated $100 billion in ad revenue. So I get it. They're a big tech company that has way too much money than any company should have, and they can't afford. But I see why they wouldn't. I see why they wouldn't want to give in.
Of course. I think that, like, so to your point, I've said two thoughts.
Yeah.
One, if we get to a point where, like, to the newsstand comment, if you are a magazine company and you want to be sold at Shoppers, Shoppers still, like, you buy, the company pays, like, I think $100,000 for a UPC code, but like, you pay, like, the Shoppers pays Fashion Canada magazine a certain amount to hold it in the store and then makes profit off of selling it. Like, you pay for the stock that you hold to then resell to other people. Like, you as a store owner must purchase the products from the creators that you then sell to the people who have the hair that come for you the services at your store. But at the same time, that then begets the question, news versus then, would Facebook start paying all content creators for their content? Because right now you have companies paying content, like, I see content creators as commercials that are then driving traffic to Facebook. But there aren't that many people who are content creators for Facebook. That's just the medium.
Hmm.
But at what point do we get to a weird place where Facebook's like, I'm going to pay a hair brand to get an influencer on my website because they don't need it? But
Hmm.
it's a very weird dynamic that you're talking about, because, like, you do pay people to put stuff in the newspaper. Like, people can pay to put into the newspaper, but then also, like, a store acquires the newspaper and then sells it at a markup.
Yeah, absolutely. But is that so? But a Shoppers Drug Mart
Shout out
news
SS,
display, you know, that Shoppers Drug Mart franchise doesn't make money off the magazine's ad revenue, right? And Google and Facebook does. Google and Facebook makes ad revenue. So that was actually a really good example, and it gave me some food for thought. But at the same respect, like, when Facebook came along, and to our younger listeners won't even know what this is, but blew MySpace out of the water and essentially had them shut down, or when Facebook Messenger came along and then MSN Messenger wasn't relevant anymore, or when TV came along and affected radio. I mean,
Yeah.
like MSN Messenger didn't have the right. These are companies, and so are news agencies. They provide a public service, but MSN didn't have the right to go to Facebook Messenger and say like, "Hey, you affected my ability to make money. You got to pay me." Right?
Right.
So like these news. I personally view the news as entertainment. Yeah. Now the goal of journalism is to keep politicians accountable, to
Mhm.
tell the truth, to talk about stories, but really there's a sensationalism in it as well. Whereas I viewed news as a form of entertainment. It's not like watching a fictional show, but it's entertainment. It's something that you are occupying your time with. And I know you're going to get to the forest fire example, which is not entertainment, but
Mhm.
news is a company. uh, and I believe most news agencies are for-profit companies as well, that maybe have a higher budget and does get
Yeah.
taxpayer funding. And I know in Canada there's also journalistic funding that is paid for by the government that is meant to pay for news agencies. I don't know the details of it,
Cool.
but my essential point is, if one company comes out with a new technology that makes like Apple and BlackBerry, right? The BlackBerry didn't get to go to Apple and be like, "Hey, your phone put us out of business. I think you need to pay us now for every phone that you sell,"
But the other
because we invented the smartphone. BlackBerry invented the smartphone, but they don't. Apple doesn't owe them any money.
But the other thing too is that like no one has put news out of business. So a lot of people that were initially
Getting there.
saying this is tyranny and how dare you. CBC.ca is still a website, whether Facebook is there or not. There are other
Yeah,
ways to get news. Now, I did voice note you and say that in my other opinion about this is what it does is it makes access to the news more difficult. If you
absolutely.
are a person who is precariously housed, living on the street, and you don't have the radio in the car to listen to, you don't have a TV to turn on CTV or Global, and you are relying on like getting Wi-Fi while standing outside of a Starbucks. Instagram or Facebook would obviously be very easy to look at the news and find out COVID cases, find out about the flu, find out about any to your example about the wildfires, when the smoke was all over Toronto and it was literally a hazard to go outside and breathe over the summer. We had Instagram to look at to tell that. Like I used to get my news primarily from Instagram and Facebook because I was already
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like you still had to click on a link to get to the website to get to the full story because
Yeah.
social media still limits how much of the story you can see in the first place, and everything was clickbait. So it's this very weird thing where like it's frustrating. I personally think that who's being impacted the most are organizations that are deemed news that do not make as money as the big news conglomerates, but are not being shared. And like
Yeah.
I will say, like Buy Blacks, Gonez Media, all of these sort of like originally grassroots organizations that have made a lot of headway still rely on those ads on the website to generate more revenue because they don't have the government of Canada necessarily in their back pocket, or Bell
Mhm.
Media or Rogers Media. And so it's the stories about Black people, about Indigenous communities, about BIPOC communities that are going to end up getting lost because they're the stories that end up making a lot of the news. And two, it's the people who might really need the news the most. And it's these grassroots organizations coming from bringing community together that I think are so important, that now it's like, how are we going to make this? How are people going to find this? So far, my answer is
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
which is owned by Facebook.
Well, I shared an article on LinkedIn this week,
Who
but
did?
I did.
Well, you're allowed to share an article as a user of what I can
You can
post.
on Facebook. I
You
tried to
can?
post I tried to post the Buy Blacks article I wrote this week, and it said this link is not in compliance with the Canadian government standard. You cannot share this
Oh,
link. And I clicked
interesting.
post.
Okay.
Today I tried to share the most recent CBC radio thing that I did that dropped today, and I can't add like when you add the link feature in your stories and you try to hit save, it's like you can't post that link. It stops you. But
Oh,
LinkedIn let me. I thought LinkedIn was in Meta.
It's not owned by Meta?
I didn't think so. I
You can
wouldn't be
type it in and
surprised if
check.
I'm wrong.
That's really interesting because I still know of pages on Facebook, I won't name drop them, that are sharing news articles regularly, and they haven't been banned yet. And I hope they don't. But yeah, and so there's just so many questions around this bill. Like, for instance, how is Meta and Google? Go ahead.
LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, not Meta.
My bad. Okay, well that makes sense.
Thank you, Microsoft, for letting me talk about Black people. That's my thing. Is like I'm just gonna start being like Facebook's racist. Let me talk about my homies. I have things I
um,
want to say about the Malakela Foundation and their work. Let me say.
but what you brought up poses a really interesting question because the bill also calls for Meta and Google to be responsible for negotiating independent contracts with every news agency. That sounds like that could be 30,000 different news agencies. And what defines a news agency? At what point does an organization become a news agency? If every single person that makes a Facebook page or registers a this or that or a podcast and is talking about the news, how are these companies expected to have their lawyers come up with contracts for every agency? Does this bill only really serve to benefit the, you know, who the people listening know, CBC, CTV, Global? Like,
Mhm.
who is this going to benefit? Would Meta and Google be responsible for making relationships with Gonez Media and Buy Blacks? Or like, at what point? How many followers do you have to have? What does your engagement have to be before you're worthy to sit down at the table and request money from these
Yes.
companies? The government didn't specify. They didn't draw a clear line at what the responsibilities will be. And again, Australia has been successful for this. France is moving towards this. It's really a big pissing battle at the moment because if they give in to Canada, can I say pissing? If they give in to Canada, I assure you, every country in the world is going to be floodgates open. Everyone's going to expect Facebook and Google to pay their news agencies for every single link. And again, these companies have more money than they can ever do anything with. But why are they responsible for? I trust. I don't work for these companies. I think that it would be
Yeah.
great if they. It would be great if they would revenue share, but I just don't understand why they're responsible to share their revenue with other companies that are for-profit organizations. And why do these companies just, if you make a better technology than what's existed and you make money off it, why do you owe the company that you trumped money?
And
That's
again,
the
I
thing
don't
that's
think it's a
confusing.
company that you trump. Like I don't see Facebook
They're
and
still
any
there.
of those media organizations as direct competitors. Like I don't go to ctv.ca and post pictures of my cat. Like they're not the same. They're not the same. One literally benefits the other.
It's
And it's
advertising dollars, though. Go
yes,
ahead. No,
yes.
sorry. Go
No,
ahead. One benefits the other. No, you're totally right. It's not the same company at all.
yeah.
Uh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's
Please
okay.
finish your thought.
I was just gonna say that one benefits the other through the other. One makes more ad dollars than the other. I don't know if you need to give your like weird younger cousin your extra money just because you're in two different lanes. It's very much a weird thing.
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say something else and it sort of escaped me. But the other thing that I was gonna highlight because you said I was gonna touch on it and then I sort of didn't was the
Yeah.
fact that like the biggest thing that this has affected was when there were all of those wildfires relying on the news for safety and access to safety. So not only is it, I want to highlight the lack of community aspect, the difficulty that some of these grassroots organizations are going to have to share the news. I just remembered the other thing I was going to say. It's also the fact that the people who rely on the news for safety, in terms of like the wildfires, it was very difficult to understand where to go and what to do and how it really showed how easy social media made the news to be accessible for some people, as they
Hmm.
were trying to escape Kelowna and get safe because it was there that, typically you would have, let's say, a fire team or whoever on standby saying like, don't go to this area, avoid this county. And even more often than not from here in Toronto, it's Facebook and Moncton News Chasers and RCMP New Brunswick when I see some cordoned off area of home. And then I hear everyone else, but like I don't see that stuff on CBC, and I worry about my people all the time. the other thing I was going to say in terms of building those independent contracts is, do you know how many egotistical influencers would be like, I'm the news, and then would submit these like appeals to be considered as like a news contractor to Meta?
Mhm.
Furthermore, right now, now that there's this push to actually have influencers read articles as green screen content to get views for the news on these websites, that gives them more notoriety to say they are the news. If I'm reading an article and I've got 3,500 followers, am I the news? I didn't write the article, but I'm sharing the article and I'm helping that website make money. So hey Meta, pay me some of the money, because I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
That's funny because, yeah, at the moment, everyone who is an organization is being like, "Oh no, don't ban me, please. I'm not the news. Don't ban me, don't ban me, don't ban me." But if this agreement goes through, and if they Meta
I'm
and
the
Google,
news.
yeah, yeah, I'm the news. I'm the news. I'm the news. I need give me a cut of that money, bro.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've never classified ourselves as the news, and so
Entertainers, don't
YouTube,
ban us.
Google,
D-19.
we are just entertainers. We are podcasters.
But like, if you start cutting checks,
Then we're the news. Then we're
I
the
could be
news.
news. I could be news. And the other thing I want to
Oh,
highlight, because I want to talk about the censorship of Canadian news, is that this is happening on the cusp of, and it's been very big news here in Toronto this week. Entertainment Tonight, after 18 years, has
yes,
been canceled. Chorus
yes,
News has shared that because of a lack of advertising dollars, they
yeah,
are
exactly.
ending the show after 18 years. Cheryl Hickey has worked for that company for 23 years. I don't know if they just like all rolled up one day and everyone was fired. They have 7 shows left and then it's
I mean,
over. And
probably.
it's a very weird I was talking to I happen to be friends with some of them. And so I was
Mhm.
talking to some of them about this yesterday at the Art Bash, and it's a very bizarre thing, and a lot of the conversation right now is the censorship of Canadian news. Like, while there is Entertainment Tonight in America and we, sort of copied the
Yeah,
template of the show, it still
yeah,
had a focus on Canadian musicians, on Canadian media, on Canadian entertainment. And so now that's sort of lost. And Ivor, Bestie, who was on the show in season 2, sort of at the onset of this said, like, there's a niche now that could be filled. And I'm like, but how? Because if there's no television advertising dollars and you can't share news on Instagram, Facebook, or Google, how are we to reclaim this 18-year-old gem that was just lost? Hope that there's more advertising dollars with Bell Media and with like Rogers Communications and these other ones, because there probably isn't. And so, like, I don't know if we're in the same place that we were like 5 years ago, where we started to question the dying of magazines and print media, which hasn't died, but it feels like is always on the way out. Granted, this might cause a resurgence. Like, is now the thing going to be a lot like no TV because we're all streaming? I'm so confused about the state of Canadian news right now.
yeah,
And also where to
absolutely.
find factual news, because it's all such a mess.
And I want to speak on that, where to find actual news. That is a question, but also, I mean, you referenced Bell Media in June of 2023. Bell Media themselves, they cut 1,300 jobs, again due to lack of money, probably due to reduced advertising or other reasons as well. So news is dying. These giant tech companies have actually been a lifeline in some ways for keeping the news alive, because they are directing traffic. Now, Facebook's goal is to keep you on Facebook, obviously. And even when you click on a link from your phone, you're looking at a browser within Facebook, because they don't really want you to leave, right? You don't actually leave Facebook. You press back and you're back on Facebook. Um, but yeah, so they are a conduit for people to get access to the news, but at the same time, you could say they're responsible for killing the news. When I started the business that we have back in 2013, even 10 years ago, like if I wanted to get the word out there, I would have to spend like $800 for a newspaper ad or like a monthly magazine or a radio slot to play like our radio ad a few times. And now with targeted marketing, and I didn't even know who was hearing that. Maybe it was only reaching 5% of my intended market, but now with targeted marketing digitally online, I know that my ad dollars are going exactly where I want them to go, and they're being it's reaching the people I want them to reach. So yeah, lots of jobs being cut, and yeah, cell phones, even people who are economically struggled or poor or disenfranchised, they usually do have a cell phone and they have access to Wi-Fi, and that is a great way for them to get their news. My question that I want to ask you is, if you were a conspiracy theorist and you wanted to talk about things like global experiments on the population, social experiments to see how people react to things, kind of like a lot of conspiracy theorists were talking about with COVID, like the great social experiment, the control and sheeple and vaccines and this, that, and the other. um, if there was this push towards a one world order and you wanted to do a social experiment, like what would happen if we just took the news away from the people? What would happen if we took the news away from Canadians? How would they respond? Well, let's see. Let's take it away. What's actually been really shocking through all of this, Hillary, is that for the most part, they took away Canadians' access to the news or easy access to the news. And you know what Canadians said about it? And you know what Canadians did about it? Yeah, to those of us listening audio, Hillary shrugged her shoulders.
How much?
Canadians did
But
jack,
what can we
S-H-I-T.
do? But
I
that
don't
it like
know. We can
in
riot, we
all
can complain, we can fight, we can boycott Facebook, we can do something. Canadians didn't even care. If you didn't work within the industry and your finances weren't impacted, they took away the news, which is again our access to, in most cases, the truth, what politicians are doing, what's going on in our society. News is seen as a way to keep politicians accountable because otherwise they're operating in the dark and we don't know what they're doing. No one did anything. Where's the riots? Where's the fighting? Where's the
but
protests?
they
Where's
didn't
the demand?
touch
They didn't take away the news, but these websites, they're down, their clicks are down 50 to 80%. So we had easy access to the news and now it's gone. And no one said boo. I just think that's weird.
if we've learned anything from COVID, we've learned the Canadians are docile until it is past the point of no return and it is extreme and it is directly impacting them. We are very passive. Right now, people are annoyed that the news isn't just a tap away and that they've got to type in ctv.ca. And
Mm-hmm.
like they're still able to do that. Right now, I think they're like, oh, this is an annoyance. I don't think they necessarily see it. And now, us being the conspiracy theorists, I don't think they see it as a stepping stone to a greater loss or a bigger divide. I think that what we've learned from seeing riots is extreme measures are what cause riots and that type of reaction. The murder of George Floyd got a lot of the world out of their seat. Thinking
Only
that
because of
you were
COVID.
losing your rights over your body autonomy caused the convoy.
Mm-hmm.
People right now are just like, oh, I just have to type extra letters. I think if it got to a place where like the Senate and Mark Zuckerberg are at each other's throats and it's like we're just not gonna have the news there anymore, or somehow like it just doesn't load on the internet. Like I don't even know how that would work. Or you know what would be the worst? You know what would be worse?
Well, the worst
They
hasn't
don't
happened yet because Google hasn't pulled the news yet.
Well, I was gonna say the worst would be Google pulling the news or like Facebook pulling out of Canada as a response. Because if we lose Meta, and then I would riot because I'd be like, what am I gonna do without my likes? Who's gonna see that I'm pretty? What do you mean? Then
Dopamine
we
hits,
would
the dopamine hits, yeah.
actually have riots. But right now people are just like whatever. So
But that's
like
what I'm
no, and I agree with you. I think that but to answer your question about the social experiment, that could be where we're headed. I love a conspiracy. I have no idea. We've done basically nothing because we think nothing's really happening. We have, I would say, as a collective, while not trusting the government, we have a lot of faith and like, oh, it'll go back to the way it was. There's no way that it can stay this way. Oh, this is just annoying for now. I'm sure it'll fix itself. That's all everyone has said around me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, but I don't know, it's been like, it feels like most of the summer, it's been like 2 months. I haven't heard any updates. I still can't really see my news. I'm still not making money. So,
Well, this hasn't even so, and again, you're like, it impacts you directly, but for most people it doesn't. And this is just the law hasn't even come into effect yet. So Meta preemptively pulled the news. But Google has said that when this law comes into effect in about 2 months from now, if nothing is worked out, we're going to pull the news. I mean, you can still get a lot of news on Google. And when you do a Google search, news stations pop up all the time. Even if you're not looking for the news, you research something about something you heard about, or maybe you saw it on your TikTok or something like that, but you look it up. I know TikTok's becoming its own search engine, but then you see the news articles on Google. But what happens when you can't even find a Canadian news article on Google? That's when the news really starts to go away. And then what happens when, because of that, if just from Facebook alone, a lot of these websites clicks are down 50 to 80%. What happens when Google pulls it? What happens when all the news agencies go out of business? Now, we already know, like in provinces like New Brunswick, the Irvings own the news. And we know in other provinces, other big companies own like every news station, every radio
right.
station, every magazine. What happens when the news agencies go out of business? You can't, first of all, you can't find it on Google, and then they go to business as well. What does that mean for news? And what does that mean for openness and what we call a free Western democratic society?
Right. I think that I think that what would end up happening in like a realistic way is you would hope that the government would then start to help to fund ways for the news. You would hope that some rogue human being would then make, like, if Donald Trump can make a social media app, someone could make another app, and then all of Canadians would migrate to an app to be able to share the news that isn't Meta owned. You would think that there would be like grant owners that would start to fund other websites and ways to find it. But then that also allows for, like, the Irvings own the news. So the news is nice to the Irvings. So then when you have cases where Donald Trump owns social media and anyone can just sort of fund an app to share what they want and go rogue, then you just have further misinformation because there's no regulations, because there's no journalistic standards and practices, because
Mm-hmm.
there isn't one news policy. It's, I don't know, Brendan Gonez makes an app, so he owns the app. Shout out to Brendan Gonez. That was not shade. Also want to add, the first reading of all of this stuff started in February 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at June 22nd was the last concurrence in the motion respecting the House of Commons amendment. They haven't done anything since June. So we're just in limbo.
We're just literally in limbo. Yeah.
No.
And I mean, it is an experiment in a way. And I
Yeah.
called it a pissing match earlier, but it's it's very weird to think about a world without news. Uh, and it's just, I don't know. Where do we go from here? So and that goes back to that's what I was going to say. Where it goes back to the conversation about public funding. The government
Mhm.
wants the government. The news agencies are dying. They're not making enough money. They're laying off employees, and they need funding. So the government has gone to American big tech to say you need to fund. You need to help fund our Canadian news agencies, and they have this argument that because you are just a portal. You are just a portal. A Google search engine is just an indexing engine, kind of like Facebook can be as well.
Mhm.
You just display things that are on the internet based on how people search, and like all your bots crawling the web. You're just displaying things, but now you have to fund Canadian media, and if that goes through, then they're going to have to fund Swiss media and Nigerian media and Bangladesh media and Brazilian media, and I don't know where it's going to stop. And again, Facebook and Meta and Google have enough money to fund the whole world, but why is it their responsibility? Where you said eventually the other people are going to create news apps and stuff like that, but it should be, the news should possibly be government funded, and CBC is,
Mhm.
I don't think they're completely like bipartisan, but CBC is government funded and they're supposed to be neutral, because we know that news agencies always lean one way or another
Mhm.
politically, whether even if they try not to.
Yeah.
It's
But
yeah, you can't have, the last thing I'm going to say, sorry, I took
yeah,
a
yeah.
breath.
No, it's okay.
um like I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and you said that people tend to have faith in the government, which is weird because a parent might be responsible for one person, uh, and they're not always completely honest with their kids. Like, why would we think the government is always honest with us? In terms of that, I don't know. It's a weird social experiment, especially just coming years after COVID. This argument that is causing news to be less accessible than it was before.
All I was going to say is, and I realized that like this doesn't necessarily like this isn't accessible for everybody who isn't like tech savvy. Couldn't we all download VPNs and pretend we're in the UK? And then like I don't know that that works on phones, but like
Yeah, you can, and in fact, yeah, I don't know how that would work, but I still wouldn't be seeing Canadian news, I don't think, because I believe Facebook has pulled Canadian news from anywhere in the world. If you were a Canadian living in the UK and you wanted to look for Canadian news, I don't think it's going to show up on your newsfeed.
no, I think it's like blocked in the region of Canada because when I went to New York, I could see news. Like they don't know I'm Canadian. I think it's the location of the device.
Good question. I don't
So
know.
then couldn't we just pretend we're in the UK?
That's
I'm
that's
going to
way
try.
more work. I have VPNs. I could try it, but I don't know. That's even more work in some ways than just
Well, of
typing in
course.
ctv.ca.
Well, yeah, it definitely still is, but if we're trying to get to a place, I don't know. I'm just trying
So
to make
yeah,
money.
well, I mean, for the listeners out there, I think they are trying to know what's going on around them and in their communities and have
Yeah,
easy access to that. And I mean, I just called new Facebook's news feed the news feed, and I just realized that it's called the news feed, which
yeah.
is there's a bit of irony there that I don't think we have time to tap into. We thought this was going to be a 20-30 minute conversation, and we were also considering talking about the news on this episode, but halfway through I realized, well, that might not be safe.
But we can talk about the news in D-19 because what's D-19?
That's not a news story exactly, but we, on this channel, even we have to rethink things for season 3, I think, because traditionally we would share images of news articles every other episode and talk about that. So it's a weird landscape that people like us, even though we're entertainers and not the news, are navigating. And yeah, as we start season 3, it could be just more guests. I'm seeing, like you said, I don't see this on my algorithm anymore. I see it on TikTok, but not on Instagram. But are you, when you scroll your Instagram, I'm not seeing any influencers talking about the news anymore. I never see that on my news on
I
my
don't think I got it as
reels.
often as you. I do see like this one creator whose name I won't say just to make sure that they're still
Yeah.
able to create that content. I'll share it on our socials. But her I think I sent it to you because she's doing that sort of green screen recounting
Hmm.
of articles type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You
She's
did.
still doing it. What's weird is that she's doing it for one of the organizations that I write for, and they are posting it, but because she's been banned, like because our organization's been banned, the recounting of that news doesn't go anywhere. Like I can't share the reel
Oh,
about my article because of the organization that's listed as a collaborator. So that's a mess. But for other organizations, like I'm seeing her content.
wild,
It's a mess.
wild. Well,
Season 1.
here we are, episode
Continue.
1 of season 3. We couldn't think of we probably could have, but we thought it would be very fitting to start the season talking about Bill D-19, because it may affect how people view what we do as well in the near future, because we want to be able to continue to do this, and we have been able
And
to so far.
And if you've listened this far, first of all, as Clinton would typically say, you're a real one. And before I do what I think you think I'm about to do,
Where
tell
is it?
us,
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
do you want us to put news on our website? Are you going to want us to talk about more news as long as we can? Because now this is going to be the place where you get it. Is there a way the BlackLantic could support the community in relation to getting that content out there as best as we can? until then, if you want that type of content, the only places you can get it would be LinkedIn and TikTok. So follow us there. Give us money so that we can have a website that can hold all of the NEWS, whatever corner.
I think one of our images are flipped. Mine's up there. Oh, God.
Mine's over here.
Yeah, and what's going to happen, like real talk, like what's going to happen when the country of Wakanda wants to start demanding, you know, what's going to happen when the country of Wakanda starts demanding that their news agencies are funded by Meta and Google?
Why aren't they using their minerals to fund public sector news? Angela Bassett, pay for our news. Excuse me, Miss Bassett. Can you pay for our news?
I'm gonna end this. We hope you've enjoyed. We've missed you, and you know, we take a break every 30 episodes because, as you can imagine, that's a lot of work. To grow, to recoup, to reassess, make things a little bit different. We already know that this season is going to be better than the first two. Thank you for everyone who's been along for the ride. We are going to stress a little bit more this season that, you know, while we are always looking at ways of generating revenue ourselves to stay afloat, we need your support. We need your support. There's going to be a new link on our website where you can fund us to help us support the good work that we do. We know we've proven that we do important work, not just through this podcast, but all the other things that this podcast has led to. Hillary, you're really good at dropping all the things that we get up to outside of this podcast and things we've been inviting to do. In fact, and really interesting things coming up for the month of October you might want to talk about quickly before we hit that 1 hour mark, and then we're going to peace out. Yeah,
very, very quickly, we will be at Music New Brunswick. I will be hosting a panel about podcast best practices, and one of the guests is this guy right here. And then we're also going to be one on tips and tricks for giving better interviews for artists, and how to sort of handle that. So very thankful to Music New Brunswick for having us. Oh, and on the 19th, the Moncton Library is going to be having us. We will be giving a 2-hour talk, a little bit about the history of Black people in New Brunswick, but moreover, the history of the KKK in New Brunswick, because that history has not been very widely shared. It's something that I knew nothing about and was not taught in schools, and was something that I couldn't really get into the news when I tried to. So the best that I could do was the radio and some reels and our content. So we will be sharing that there. So if you're able to join us, the space fits 70 people. It will be October 19th from 3 to 5. I think you can just come.
Yeah, hopefully I think we'll be able to post some links about that on our channel. So if you're not following us, type in BlackLantic anywhere you do anything on the internet, and we will be there for Music New Brunswick Week, which is will be on the 21st. I think you mentioned both of your panels. I'll also be doing a panel on music and podcasting, and why it's important for musicians to either be guests on podcasts and the different audience they can reach, or start their own music podcast to be able to connect to guests in more meaningful ways, which is significant because I'm also starting a specific Black Atlantic musician focused podcast, in which I always like to put the disclaimer: you should never listen to music based on the color of someone's skin. But there's a lot of talented artists out here who are unheard, and if you want to learn more about them, that's going to be the place to do that. Should we just peace out? Thank you for listening. Episode 1.